Father God, we thank you and we praise you for this day, Lord, and for each and every day, Lord, Father God. It's such a blessing. It is such a blessing to be here with these women, Lord, Father God, that we can glean off of each other. But Lord, we pray that it's you speaking to us, Lord, Father God, and that we just give you all the glory and all the praise, Lord. And Lord, we lift up Peggy to you right now, Lord, Father God, that your holy hands are upon her, Lord, Father God, that she is getting the rest she needs, Lord, Father. And she is hearing your word, that you are speaking to her personally, Lord Father. Lord, we lift all things to you, Father God. And we love you and we praise you. And I ask you this in your Son Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Day 2, we're on Hannah's prayer of brokenness. And I want to highlight barrenness, what it means. The world's views are condition of not being able to have children, the fact of being empty without anything new, the state of not being able to produce fruit. Bible's definition is land that bears no crops and females that bear no issue. Metaphorically, barrenness may describe an unproductive or desperate condition, which, I don't know about you guys, but I see it myself. What else does it say? Therefore, I tell you that the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people who will produce its fruit. That was Matthew 21:43. Okay. Day 2. Apparently, Hannah listened to her husband's counsel. She ate and drank there at Shiloh. When she finished eating, she arose and went to the entrance of the temple area, a complex of dwellings that included a tabernacle. Eli the priest was sitting on a seat near the doorway when she came. What do you read about Hannah in 1 Samuel 1:10? I'll go to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 1:10 says, and she was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. So what was the condition of her heart?
Sad.
Yes. Broken, yeah. Hannah was in bitterness of soul. She prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Hannah was greatly distressed, or literally bitter of soul. The years and the tears had taken their toll. She was at a low point and knew that she must do something, but this time her focus was not on her physical barrenness, nor on Peninnah. She recognized that her anguish was getting the best of her, producing in her a spiritual barrenness. She had been responding wrongly by focusing on her circumstances rather than the Lord. The problem was in her soul. She was bitter of soul, resentful, anxious, striving, and she wept in brokenness before the Lord. How did she handle this barrenness in her heart?
She prayed.
Well, she came to the Lord in prayer, and she wept brokenness before him, before the Lord, went to him in prayer.
She gave the Lord all of her heart. What were you going to say?
Well, just that she realized that she was not going about it the right way, and she changed her ideas and she decided to pray. I think after her husband spoke to her, that's when she realized that.
Her heart attitude of her heart.
Hannah came before the Lord in prayer with a broken and contrite heart. She knew she could pour out all her heart to the Lord and that he would understand. He had closed her womb, but because he was the creator and the giver of all life, he could open her womb and give her children if he chose to do so. She wept with many tears as she prayed. She recognized her condition, her circumstances, her hurts, but her focus now was on the Lord. Did you know, barren women and children they bore? Hannah was one of many barren women the Lord blessed with significant children. Those include Sarah with Isaac, Genesis 11:30, 21, 1-3, Rebekah with Jacob and Esau, Genesis 25, 21 through 26, Rachel with Joseph and Benjamin, Genesis 29, 31, 30, 22 to 24, 35 to 18, Mona's wife with Samson, Judges 13, 2 through 3, Ruth with Obed, who became the grandfather of King David, Ruth 4:13, Hannah with Samuel, 1 Samuel 1 through 2, 5 and 19 through 20, and Elizabeth with John the Baptist, Luke 1:7 and 24 through 25. To whom does Hannah pray? 1:11. Note the same in verse 3.
she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. So she gave him to, and with verse 3, the same was the Lord of hosts. Does anybody know why the Lord of hosts? Did it say?
Oh, because it's the Lord of all, which is a big host.
Whenever they
Oh,
talk
whatever
about
hosts
hosts,
is-
it's mostly like the angels and all the
It includes
heavenly,
even those that don't choose to follow.
the hosts, like remember when they have the Christmas carols and they talk about the heavenly hosts? That's more like the angels and all of
Is heavenly
heavens
real?
and earth, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Cause it says a little bit further down that.
Oh, okay. When,
Oh, okay.
when, that page?
Okay, that's it.
Heavenly host.
Alright, so as Hannah prayed, she called on the name of the Lord of hosts, signifying one of two things. The Lord of hosts is the Lord who is over all the heavenly hosts, the angels, the armies in heaven. He could also refer to his being Lord over the host of heaven, of their positions like clockwork. In either case,
Right, you skipped them.
okay, that's okay, okay. It could also refer to his being Lord of all hosts of heaven, that is the stars, the sun, the moon, and the millions of galaxies. God controls their orbits and their positions like clockwork. In either case, he is the sovereign Lord. She recognized his sovereignty over everything. He rules over everything, everywhere, and he was not oblivious to her situation. The Lord could give Hannah a son. What did Hannah pray? You want me to read it quick? Oh, want me to do it? And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to you, the Lord, for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head. Hannah asked the Lord to look, which carries the idea of examining and investigating and thus fully perceiving. She desperately wanted him to be fully aware of the affliction of thy maidservant. Here we see her humility and a spirit of submission to the Lord of the host. She was his maidservant who willingly humbled herself before him. Her pain and her affliction produced humility in her, even as the wilderness experience of the children of Israel was meant to humble them for their own good. Deuteronomy 8:2-5, 15-16. She asked the Lord to remember her, which meant act on her behalf. Give thy maidservant a son, she expressed her devotion and trust as she made a vow to the Lord. If the Lord would grant this gift of a son to her, she would in turn give him back to the Lord all the days of the child's life. She also promised that no razor would come upon his head. When Eli the priest saw Hannah's mouth moving, but heard nothing, he assumed she was drunk. At the Feast of Feasts, it was not uncommon for someone to feast a little too much and get drunk. The pagan nations around Israel certainly experienced drunkenness at their places of idol worship, and sadly so had some in Israel. This woman, however, was not consumed with alcohol. She was consumed with bitterness of soul. She was praying from her heart because of her deep anguish of soul. Hannah's Nazarite vow. In the vow Hannah made, she offered to give Samuel back to the Lord so that he might serve the Lord all the days of his life. Her statement about the razor never touching his head was very similar to the requirements for a Nazarite. In addition to the stipulation, a Nazarite never ate or drank anything from the vine, grape juice, wine, grapes, raisins, never touched anything dead. Hannah's devotion to the Lord led her to offer this son to the Lord for the life of the Nazarene. Numbers 6:1-8. What was Hannah's answer to Eli? Verse 15. It's 1 Samuel 1:15-16, right?
Right.
That's also. Okay, so it says, not so, my Lord, Hannah replied. I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking wine or beer. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish from grief. Okay.
So what was Hannah's answer to Eli?
She told him she wasn't drunk. She said she wasn't drunk, she was just in anguish. She was praying with all her heart and mind, and she was just doing what she wanted to do. She was also giving him, she says, she was talking to Jesus, saying, well, God, saying, I'll vow to give my son back to you, which is a different life.
And if focused on the depth of her anguish, on the weight of the oppression in her spirit. She had even poured out 1 cup of wine. Rather, in her oppression, she had poured out her soul before the Lord. Her prayer flowed from the depths of her soul, from a humble, submissive heart, calling on her sovereign Lord to act on her behalf. She would not dishonor God by any drunkenness. She quickly urged Eli not to think of her as a worthless woman drunk on wine. She knew the Lord was her covenant-keeping Lord, Jehovah, and she was submitting her heart concerns to him. All her thoughts, all her desires for a son, even all her memories of Peninnah's insults she brought before the Lord. Are there some issues that have been a torment to your mind, haunting you continually? Are these issues keeping your attention so focused on the pain that you find it hard even to think straight? Cry out to the Lord. He wants to hear. He waits to hear your earnest petition.
Now, this is personal, but does anybody want to share? Not we can in a way, I'll have a lot of own personal things. Okay, can you keep going from verse 7?
Sure. In 1 Samuel 1:17, Eli responded very graciously, "Go in peace, shalom, full tranquility, harmony." He then proclaimed a blessing for Hannah. "May the God of Israel grant your petition." She pleaded with God as a needy soul, coming to a sovereign Lord, knowing He was capable of granting her request. Now she could return with this word of peace in her soul. Do you want me to continue? Word study, daughter of Belial. When Hannah spoke to Eli at the door of the temple, she urged him not to think of her as a daughter of Belial, a worthless woman, in 1 Samuel 1:16. The meaning of Belial has 2 possibilities. The first takes its Hebrew word as rooted by bly, to swallow, referring to Sheol or death as the greatest swallower of life, thus bringing destruction. The second perspective combines the 2 words belie and Yael to form a word Belial, meaning without value or worthless, and thus wicked. Therefore, Ben Belial would be translated son of worthlessness. In the New Testament, Belial became associated with Satan, 2 Corinthians 6:15. That was the furthest thing from the heart and mind of Hannah. How did the statement of Eli in verse 17 affect Hannah? 1 Samuel 1:18. Well, she went to the temple and she ate and she took his statement seriously, and her countenance changed. She started thinking differently, more on the positive
Yeah, it's
instead
like
of
all of us.
negatively.
Like all of us,
Right.
huh? Not thinking about the negative and think the positive. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes this is hard.
Yes.
Whoa. Can you finish?
Hannah took Eli's statement very seriously. She saw in his statement the grace of God. There was a new ray of hope for Hannah. When she left him, she went back to her family and made a good meal. Her countenance no longer revealed a troubled heart. Hannah's encounter with the Lord and with his representative Eli had sent a message to her heart, and now she would wait in faith for the answer to her prayer. It is important to realize that her countenance changed after she met with God, not after she received the answer. Her heart was at rest regardless of the outcome.
Julie, can you read the big one?
And the blessing of the son. The next morning, the family rose up early, worshiped the Lord, and then returned to Ramah. Would things be different now, or would the grief caused by Peninnah continue? How did the Lord respond to the prayer of Hannah? 19.
Can you read 119?
Then they rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord and returned and came to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. I wrote, they rose early in the next morning and worshiped the Lord remembered Hannah. What happened in her life? Verse 20. So it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked for him from the Lord. what happened in her life. In time, she bore a son, and she called him Samuel, because I have asked for him from the Lord. Samuel means name of God. Hannah had prayed that the Lord would remember her. Indeed, he did. The Lord remembered her request, and his timing gave her the ability to conceive. She gave birth to a son, the precise desire of her heart and exactly what she had asked the Lord to give her. She named him Samuel. There is significance in Samuel's name. When Hannah gave her son the name Samuel, she made the statement, because I have asked for him from the Lord. 1:20. Samuel literally means name of God, but in the Hebrew language it sounds similar to the word that means heard by God. This play on words reflected Hannah's heart in petitioning the Lord for a son. He had heard her cry and answered her prayer. What do you find in 1 Samuel 21:23 about this family and about Hannah? 21. Now the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, not until the child is weaned. Then I will take him, that he may appear before the Lord and remain there forever. So Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. Only let the Lord establish his word. Then the woman stayed and nursed her son until she had weaned him. So I wrote, when the family went to offer the annual sacrifice, Hannah decided to remain behind because she hadn't yet weaned Samuel. She wanted him to be ready to appear before the Lord and remain there forever. Can I go some more?
Yeah, read those next two.
Okay. As one looks at the interaction between Elkanah and Hannah, there is an evident oneness between them. Elkanah was in agreement with this child, that this child was a gift to the Lord and would be taken to Shiloh at the proper time. Elkanah went to Shiloh not only to offer the regular sacrifices, but also to give the offerings in fulfillment of a vow he had made. This was possibly a vow in agreement with Hannah's vow. It's evident that he considered Samuel as a child devoted to the Lord. From Leviticus 7, 11, 16, 27, 28. Hannah stayed in Ramah while the rest of the family traveled to Shiloh. There she would continue raising the infant, preparing him for the time he would go to be with Eli. She told Elkanah that she would wean Samuel before taking him to Shiloh. Children were usually weaned at about age 2 to 3. The Lord had answered prayer, and Hannah and Elkanah were living in the blessing of that answer. They now experienced true contentment of heart. When we are surrendered to the Lord and his will, he will truly be satisfied from the inside out. That is what we see in Hannah.
Sure. After about 3 years elapsed, it was time to take Samuel to Shiloh. There were certain regulations to be observed in fulfilling a vow. In Numbers 15, 1-3 and 8-10, the Lord gave specific regulations for the various sacrifices and offerings of his people. For the fulfillment of a vow, one could bring a young bull. Along with that particular offering went a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, and a drink offering of wine. That would have been about 6 quarts of flour and about 3 or 4 pints of wine. The bull was sacrificed and burnt on the altar. With it, the grain and oil were offered up in the sacrificial fire, and then on all of that, the offering of wine was poured out. In each offering is the picture of wholehearted surrender and brokenness. A bull sacrificed, its life poured out on the altar, grain crushed into flour, oil from crushed olives, and wine from beaten grapes. As the offering was burned and the wine poured out, this would have produced a sweet aroma as the smoke ascended to the heavens. A very Jewish picture of the fully surrendered heart, offering a gift of love to the Lord in heaven. Hannah brought more than the required offering according to 1 Samuel 1:24 and 25. Some translations state she brought 3 bulls, and some say she brought a 3-year-old bull. Verse 25 states that they slaughtered one bull. In either case, she was fulfilling her vow. She bought 3 times the needed flour and a full skin of wine. Some view the flour and wine as part of a meal to be eaten along with the sacrifice. There was evidently more flour and wine than needed for the sacrifice. This is a possibility. The central truth here is not whether they ate and drank, but how they worshiped. We will see that in our next verses. What is Hannah's testimony to Eli? That she was the woman who asked for a miracle and God granted it to her.
Anybody else?
But she was sad again because she had to leave the small child there.
Well, in the verses it says, and she said, "Oh my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who stood by me here praying to the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition, which I asked of him." So that was pretty much, to me, her testimony. And she did what she had asked of.
You know, I had a question. Remember back a couple of pages where it gave a list of all of the women that were barren? And I was just wondering if anybody kind of noticed if there was any like pattern there where the women that had those children gave them to the Lord. I know for a fact Samson was.
Samson was,
Yeah,
John was.
You know, I don't know, I'm just wondering if that was like something that they did in those days. I don't know how, I never had a son. And I would have loved to have had a son. I don't know if I could have given him up. But Lord, I prayed and I kept having babies so my husband could have a son. And God never honored that. But that's okay. You know, I love my daughters. I wish there was more honor for daughters, you know, I mean, but that's just was their culture. That kind of makes me feel bad for women in general in those
Well,
days.
it's kind of I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of a Latino culture. You know, you have to have a boy, you have to have a boy. I mean, even in Juan's family, you know, my son-in-law, my daughter, they only have 3 girls. And every once in a while they get teased, you know, you can't make a boy. You're not a man, you can't make a boy. I'm like, really?
Yeah, but it kind of demeans being a daughter, sort of, in a way that part of this was kind of offensive, that she didn't ask for a child, she asked for a son. And so, you know, that would have lifted up her husband's position, like you're saying, made him look like, you know, a little more macho, you know. But anyway, I guess that's their culture, and I mean, how can we argue with it? That's the way it was, and that's the way it is now.
Yep.
And it's kind of sad. But Jesus changed all that with women. He did elevate us, you know, and there's, you know, so many special things in the New Testament about women and the position that they took that just changed me. I think I would have had a hard time living in the Old Testament. I seriously, I mean, no offense, I would have. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and it didn't seem like Ruth did. I don't even know who Manoah's wife, I probably should have done.
And I don't even know about Joseph and Benjamin. I don't think Rachel, because Rachel died, right?
Yeah, having one of them,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm just was wondering if there was a pattern there.
Where were we? Oh,
Bottom of the page.
top of 100, or around the 100? No.
97, or, well, I don't know, I have a different book. In the middle, it says Hannah lent or dedicated Samuel.
Oh, yeah, right.
Would you finish reading, Teresa?
Yeah, Hannah lent or dedicated Samuel to the Lord for life. That's, but I have a different page than you do.
Okay, so
I think
did we answer the question?
Well,
What did Hannah and Elkanah do?
they gave their son to Eli to serve the Lord for his whole life.
Okay, keep going, Teresa, until the board gets stopped.
I have to tell you, there was another observation that I made there that was kind of, Eli had some really raunchy sons.
Yes, Phineas and,
He really did have some bad, they were horrible, and
they're still playing up the men.
well, I guess the reason why I'm saying that is that maybe God allowed, you know how all things work together for good?
Yes.
Maybe he allowed Eli to see the difference, the contrast between his sons and Samuel. And I'm sure he was really concerned about making sure that Samuel followed the actual, I mean, you know, when we read on, we'll find out what happened to them, but it just, I don't know, it just seemed kind of like interesting to me that Eli didn't know what a good son was supposed to be like. Or at least he didn't encourage his sons to be good. He kind of enabled them to be bad by not really, and the fact that they said he was really, really kind of rotund means that he kind of went along with the program because he ate a lot, you know, because that was part of it. They were just really greedy about the food part of the sacrificing. Anyway, okay, I'm done.
When they did the sacrificing, did they eat that meat afterwards?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking they were wasting all that and killing things for nothing. I didn't know they ate it.
Some of it they did burn, like, you know, they burned. Like, okay, it said that they weren't sure if she had 3 bulls or if she had 1 bull that was 3 years old. I think the significant part of that was that it was 3. So I think the baby was 3.
That's what I'm thinking, that he was 3 years
That
old.
he was 3 years old. I can't, oh my God, that would be so hard to give up a 3-year-old. They're so cute.
And I don't get this too, because why would she give it, I mean, his own sons, she gave him to Eli, and his sons were raised not to be good. So
Right.
I don't know how they can say, I will give him to be for the Lord his whole life, because you can't tell kids what to do. When the kid grows up, he's gonna do what he wants to do.
The culture too. Yeah, we've got to stop and think of the culture, the times, how everything was at that time. Like she said, at 3 years old, that's when you get them, you start. I look at my own children and raising them, you know, with the Lord. I had my 2 boys, they're 6 years apart. And, my older one, he just was gonna do whatever he wanted and don't tell me anything about God and don't tell, you know, where my younger one, I got him a little bit younger into the church and, yeah, I'm not saying he's lived a perfect life or anything, but, you know, he does know God and he does mention him and he does. So I think it is a big thing.
When you start rearing them.
Yeah, the younger that you get them.
So Eli must have had like a big church or school or something maybe, so that the kid would be raised up not the same way as his own sons, right? I'm thinking that she gave him to Eli like in his home, and I don't see how he could grow up to be.
Of the temple.
See, Hannah
So
didn't
there were
know.
teachers and stuff.
Hannah didn't live in the same town, and so I don't think she even knew how Eli's sons were. I mean, I'm sure the people that lived there knew that he was sleeping with women, they were sleeping with women on the steps of the, you know, they were doing horrible things, but, you know, the gossip is only usually like in their own town, and so maybe if she had known, maybe she would. You're right, you know, I don't know.
Well, if that's the temple she went to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, she lived in a different place, you know.
Commitment to the Lord is a commitment to the Lord, I guess. Or maybe it was an opportunity for Eli to do right this time.
That's
Come
what
on, I
I'm
don't know
thinking.
about you guys, say, oh, I'm pretty sure all of you guys have grandchildren, and you go, oh, I mean, me personally, you know what I didn't do with my kids? I'm like, no, I'm doing it the right way with my grandkids. I'm not, you know, they're gonna know what grandma represents, and then when it talks about the Lord, and they're gonna hear him, and they're gonna sit, and I'm gonna, you know, because of what I did do with my own kids.
That's the benefit of wisdom and age.
And yeah, you know.
Amen.
Okay, did we finish?
No, Elkanah and Hannah brought the child.
Oh, that work well?
I think so.
Well, we just finished answering that question.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Unless somebody has more. Did you have more, Carol?
No.
Where did you hear or learn about the background on Levi's children?
It's in the
It's,
Bible.
it's in this
the
next
Bible. It'll
section.
come up, yeah,
Oh.
it's in the Bible.
Okay.
Okay, can you go from Hannah Lent,
Me?
Teresa?
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
Hannah lent or dedicated Samuel to the Lord for life. The root word in Hebrew for lent is the same as the word for asked in verse 27. Hannah had asked for this son. Eli had wished for her that God would grant what she asked. Okay, I'm sorry. That was amazing to me. Eli had no idea what the woman was asking. I mean, if she had told him, I want a kid and I'm barren, he probably said, well, maybe you should pray about that. But, I mean, he didn't even ask. He just said, it's going to happen, you know? Her testimony was one of asking and receiving. When she brought the child, she gave Samuel to the Lord. She recognized the Lord had given him to her, and now she was giving him in service back to the giver. That is the heart of worship. Gratefully receiving the life God gives, and in turn,